Okay, well, when we had written this before, we had actually no, it's not for the current runner. We're trying to generate a list of activities for every runner. Sorry. So this is done a little bit dynamically, right? We got a list of all the runners, and then for each runner, we did another query for all of the activities, and we generated the HTML bit by bit. Instead, what I want to do is create a single data structure that encapsulates all of this data. I want to have a dictionary with a list of runners, and for each runner, I want to have the runner information, and I want to have the activities associated with it. So what I'm going to do is create a new dictionary called runners. Actually, it won't be a dictionary, sorry. We'll have a new, I guess, list of runners. And then as we iterate over this list, we will add to that list the runner we got from the database. Then we get our query. We're filtering our query by this runner, and for each activity, we'll add that activity to the current runner. So actually what I'll do is we'll move this down to the end here because we haven't finished building up the runner yet, and we'll say runner.activity. We'll add a new property to be this activity that we just got, and we'll take that activity, put it in the runner, and then we'll add this runner to the list of runners. So no, that's not quite right because the runner can have multiple activities. So what we really need to do, this makes more sense, set the runner, give each runner, let it have a property called activity, which is a list of activities, and what we'll do is add onto that list the current activity. There we go. That makes more sense because we can have more than one activity. So now what we've done is we've built up runners, which is a list. It's a list of runners that have activities. So instead of saying all of this, what we'll do is we're just going to pass a single value in this template called runners, but we're going to give it this data structure that we've built up. Now we can go ahead and generate some HTML that will take advantage of this. In order to do that, we have to know something about lists. So far we had learned this basic idea of creating a template to extract a variable name. There is something, it turned out these templates are actually pretty rich, and you can write a whole programming language in here. In this case, our data structure is something that's iterable. It's a list, and we want to generate some HTML for each element of the list. So we really need a for loop, and it turns out we can do that with these templates. And we do that with a different special bit of magic, which is brace parenthesis ending in parenthesis brace. So when you see one of those, this says we're going to execute some special kind of code. And we're going to execute a for loop that looks similar to the for loops that we've used in Python. And what you say is for runner in runners. So runners, remember, is the thing that's passed in, so that's allowed. I mean, that's a variable, so that's going to get turned into the list. And this says we're going to execute this code and execute the following code after this. The syntax is a little bit weird. We can't use a colon because we're in this HTML, so you have to specifically say end for like this. Then for each of these runners, we can go ahead and generate the HTML from that variable, and we use that with the brace. And then we'll put a line break at the end of each of these things. Okay, now we can go ahead and test this. We're going to go to localhost, open the home page, and what we get here is the list of runners that is generated from this template. Right, going back to what we have here, our Python code generates this data structure of runners. Runners is a list of runners which has activities. We take that runners, we pass it in, and we generate, then load this template. So our database has done all the rest of our work is in here. We have a for loop which generates our runners. That's all we've got, and so when we look at the output, we've just got runners. We can now have a nested for loop and say for each runner, let's go ahead and look at the activities. Well, the activity is in a property of runner. Activities. And we can do the same thing. We'll go ahead and end this for loop and go ahead and put out that activity. Now, let's make this in a list like we have done before. So we'll say unordered list. And at the very end of all lists, we'll end the unordered list. And each of the activities will be a list element. I think that pretty much should do it. Cross your fingers, go here, refresh. And almost, but no cigar. Okay, I looked at the source code and I found that again we have a typo. We are looking for our HTML code assumes that runner has a property called activities, but when we went and made this, we called it activity. This is kind of tough because since we're going between languages, you can't just simply use a debugger very easily. You really have to go and just look at your source code and figure it out. So activities is a list. We're appending activities, and that looks like that might do it. Let's try refresh, and there we go. I had updated the database, so I think that's probably the right thing. Let's just make sure this is correct. Let's add something to Gmail. We'll add an activity here. Localhost add activity whose runner ID equals that, and whose duration equals 70, distance equals 7. All right, we've added that. Go over here, refresh, and there's the new one, and it's associated with the right account. So we have now successfully used our first template to apply the principle of separation of concerns to separate our computation and our data from our display. It does mean that you have to learn some new syntax, and these things are a little bit ugly, so you have to really be careful to keep your data structures really simple and clean so that your HTML doesn't get too complicated. As always, if you want to learn more about what this templating looks like, just go and look it up on the web. You can search for Jinja 2 template format, and there are any number of sites that explain this documentation and give lots and lots of examples. And that is the end of this course. We are done with Google App Engine for now. We've learned lots of details, and you are ready to go do your final projects and apply all of these technologies to your own computational needs. Good luck.